Today, we're going to spark an arc on manual metal arc welding, MMAW. But here's the thing, we're not just going to talk about technique. Nah, we're going way deeper than that. We're going to get into the professional mindset, the hidden principles that really separate a decent weld from a truly great one. Let's get into it.
So, when you picture welding, what's the first thing that comes to mind? It's that super bright light, right? That sizzle of melting metal. That's the cool part for sure, but it's honestly just a tiny piece of the puzzle. The real work, the stuff that guarantees strength, safety, and quality, that happens long before and long after you ever strike that first spark. To really get this, we're going to walk through the 5 stages of a professional welding job. Think of it like it's your first day on a pro job site, and we're going through a job from the moment you get the work order all the way to the final cleanup. We'll cover the mindset, the prep, the actual welding, the inspection, and the follow-through.
First up, before you even begin. And this is all about your mindset. You see, success in this trade isn't really decided by how steady your hand is. It's decided by what you do before you even think about picking up that electrode holder.
This right here, this says it all. This is the core philosophy. The part everyone sees, the actual welding, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real strength, the substance of a good job, lies in that massive 90% of work you put in beforehand. If you get that foundation of prep right, the weld almost takes care of itself.
Okay, so let's get practical. Let's move on to our second stage and see how this all builds. Prepping for a perfect weld. This is where you literally stop failure before it has a chance to start. Seriously, every minute you spend here can save you hours of frustrating rework or even worse, a part failing out in the field.
The prep process really breaks down into 3 huge steps. First, you clean. And I mean really clean. We're talking getting rid of every speck of paint, rust, oil, anything that isn't pure bare metal. Next is the fit up. Are the pieces perfectly aligned? Is that gap between them exactly right? And finally, you control. You have to use clamps, tack welds, or jigs to lock everything down, because believe me, the heat we're about to introduce is going to try its best to pull everything out of shape.
And what are we fighting against with all that control? This monster right here, weld distortion. It's simple physics. When you heat metal, it expands. When it cools down, it contracts. If you don't manage that process, the forces involved are so incredible, they will warp, bend, and twist your work into something totally useless.
So here's the bottom line, and you got to remember this. Once the part is distorted, it's pretty much game over. You can't just bend it back. This is one of the main reasons work gets rejected on a job site, and it all traces back to rushing or skipping those prep steps. It's the perfect example of why that 90% of work beforehand is so incredibly important.
All right, prep is done. The stage is set. Now we're moving into stage 3, safety, setup, and spark. This is where the action is, and it's where both your personal safety and the quality of the weld get decided in just a matter of minutes.
Before we even think about the welder, let's talk about you. This is your personal protective equipment, and it is absolutely non-negotiable. A proper helmet with the right shade lens isn't a suggestion. Screens to protect everyone else in the area, a fume extractor to protect your lungs, and fire-resistant clothing. This is the absolute minimum for any professional job.
I really need you to let this one sink in. Arc eye. It's basically a nasty sunburn on your corneas from the UV light, can cause permanent vision damage. And it can happen from just a single, quick, unprotected glance at the arc. The risks are real, they are immediate, and they are serious.
Okay, now for the equipment. When you're welding, you've got your electrode. You know that chalky coating on the outside of it? That's flux. As it burns, it creates this invisible gas shield all around the molten metal, protecting it from the oxygen and nitrogen in the air that would completely ruin the weld. It's basically the weld's own personal bodyguard.
Getting your machine settings dialed in is everything. Just look at this. The choices you make, your amperage, arc length, your travel speed, the angle of your electrode, they all have to be just right to get that strong weld you see on the left. If any one of those is off, you get a specific problem. You see? Too fast, you get undercut. Wrong amperage, you get porosity. Every single input has a direct and immediate output on the quality of your weld. And this is so important. A lot of these defects, things like porosity or lack of fusion, can be totally hidden deep inside the weld. It might look perfectly fine on the surface, but it's really just a ticking time bomb, waiting to fail without any warning as soon as it's put under real-world stress. That's why mastering your setup isn't just about making a pretty weld, it's about safety.
So, the arc is out, the metal is cooling. Job's done, right? Not even close. Welcome to Stage 4, inspecting the final product. Now it's time to put on your detective hat and take a hard, critical look at your own work.
Look, in the professional world, your opinion on whether a weld is good enough just doesn't matter. Your work is going to be judged against a formal standard. For a lot of jobs, that's something like the Australian standard AS 1554. It gives clear objective rules for what passes and what fails. There's no guesswork.
So what are you looking for? Well, this checklist pretty much covers the usual suspects you can spot just by looking. You're hunting for any undercut along the edges, any little pinholes that signal porosity, and of course, any cracks. You're also checking for too much spatter. Every one of these is a clue that something in the process didn't go quite right.
And let's be absolutely crystal clear about what's at stake here. If you inspect a weld, say it's good to go, and then it fails later on, well, the consequences can be catastrophic. We're talking about huge safety risks and some major legal liability. This step right here is your last line of defense against disaster.
Okay, we've finally reached the end. Stage 5, finishing the job right. The weld is complete, it's passed inspection, but a true professional knows the job isn't over until the entire area is safe, clean, and ready for the next person.
This post-weld procedure needs to become a habit. First, you document everything you did on the official paperwork. Then, you clean and store all your equipment properly, and you make sure to tag anything that's broken or acting up. And finally, you get rid of all your waste, like all those used electrode stubs, the right way, following environmental rules.
So why is all this so important? Well, that paperwork you fill out, that's a legal record of what you did. Getting rid of waste properly keeps you and your company out of hot water. And just good housekeeping, that's basic safety. It prevents fires and makes sure the next person in that bay doesn't trip over your mess. It's all about respect for the job, for your coworkers, and for the law.
So, as we wrap this all up, if there's one thing you take away from all this, it should be this. That beautiful, strong, perfect weld, that's not just an act of skill. It is the final visible result of a disciplined professional process that was followed carefully from the very beginning to the very end. And that really just leaves us with one last question to chew on. The job is done, but are you a welder or are you a craftsman? See, anyone can learn to melt metal, but following the process, respecting the materials, and taking full responsibility for the entire job from start to finish, that is what turns a welder into a true craftsman.